everyone, my name is Shauna in case you don't know, and in today's video I am going to be doing another book review Tuesday. I haven't done one of these in ages and I couldn't decide which book to do one on, but I just read a book that was so awful that I needed to do a spill my thoughts on it. I've highlighted a bunch of the stuff in my Kindle that I'm going to bring up in this video. Normally I don't do that. Like this book, for example, is the book that I am going to be reading next. Well, I already started. I'm going to be finishing it next. I don't use little bookmarks and things in it, so my review of it would just be going off the top of my head. But in this one that I'm about to talk about, I actually used some highlights to get my thoughts together because let me tell you, I did not enjoy that book at all. This is one of the worst books that I've ever read. I know that there's mixed reviews on whether or not you should do a negative review or not. I honestly believe you should be honest when it comes to reviews, no matter if you know the author or not, but don't take the author in social media posts, so I'm obviously not going to be taking the author in this post. And in my opinion, when you're doing a negative review, do not say mean things towards the author. So the book that I will be talking about today is The Spheres by Jackson Lindy. I got it on Kindle. I believe it only is out on the Kindle and not a physical book. But yikes, this was awful. At the start of this year, I printed out some prompts, so challenges for me to do throughout the year, and I've already finished this one. It has 6 books in it, and then the other one I still have a bunch left. One of these says, a book set somewhere you'll be visiting this year. And I bought this book before I went on this vacation, so I counted it for this challenge. But I mean, nobody's gonna be looking at this list of prompts and correcting me and whatnot. I basically searched up Dallas, Texas books on Goodreads because, in case you don't know, I went to LeakyCon Dallas earlier this month, or last month, depending on when I upload this, okay? I'm filming this in August, but I might upload it in September, October, who knows? But on Goodreads, it said this book takes place in Dallas, Texas, and I was like, great, I can just get it for my challenge. And the thing was, the other books set in Dallas, Texas were all eroticas, and I'm just sitting there going, nope, 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 let's find one that's not an erotica, and this one popped up. This book is a sci-fi type book, I think is what you'd call it. In my brain, sci-fi is oh, we're on spaceships up in space, but that's not really sci-fi. That's just how my brain incorporates sci-fi. I'm gonna stop holding my book up like this because my arms are tired right now. I went swimming today and I'm fatigued because of my chronic illness. But anyways, this book is essentially about a man who has this fire that randomly starts up in his yard, and it's in a circular shape, and he finds a metal sphere in the ground right under where the fire was. And there is a couple other places across the US where these spheres pop up, and this story is about his reaction to the sphere and sort of how he deals with finding that object. There's numerous things that I hate about this book, and again, I'm gonna be trying not to dish out hate towards the author because I'm sure the author is a great guy, but this book just did not do it for me. The number one issue I had with this book was that there were so many small, tiny details that had absolutely no effect in the rest of the story. For example, if the backstory of a character isn't essential, for example, Viv is the wife of the main character. If her backstory and how her day at work isn't essential, like an average day per se, then we don't need that to the story. And the story, according to Goodreads, is 177 pages. So with such a short story, we don't want all these random side details. At least that's my personal belief. It pulls me away from the main story, and I'm like, what am I here for? I'm not here to know these random obscure details. I'm just giving you an example here. This isn't in the story, but if it were, oh, my story with POTS and how I got diagnosed with this chronic illness, I wouldn't be writing the story and saying, and today I'm wearing green and pink socks. It's it's those type of details that don't have an effect to the main purpose of the story. And again, if it were a longer story, say the length of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, those side details might be okay, but I really wish the main plot had been fleshed out more and there was more suspense in it, because it was very dull and it didn't move really quickly to me. The whole premise of the book sounded awesome to start off with, but I just don't think it was executed well. And I'm gonna pull up some more things up here really quickly. As I go through the details of this book, I will be talking about some spoilers, but the major spoiler, I'll warn you at the end, the major spoiler that I want to talk about, okay? So there were definitely some quotes that I enjoyed from the book, and I'm gonna list some of them off here. So she didn't like alcohol. She had no problem with Ned drinking, but she didn't need alcohol to have fun. Plus, I don't see any sort of benefit. I sort of like that quote because it sort of applies to me. I have never drunk alcohol. I'm obviously underage, but I never want to drink alcohol, and I'm never going to drink alcohol, and this sentence sort of like struck a chord with me, or I related to it a little more than the rest of this book. At one point, it does compare the Sphere to the Death Star, which I appreciated because I am a huge Star Wars nerd. So any mention of Star Wars or Harry Potter or anything like that, I'm like, yes. But the rest of the book, I was like, no. But that part, I was like, yes. So I have one more quote that I liked, and this is actually a quote from a different person that was referenced in the book. I don't know how to describe it very well, why it was referenced in there. It sort of seemed like this book was separated into 3 parts, and there was a quote by a different like famous person or a fictional famous person under each one. I'm not sure if this guy's real or not. I'm pretty sure he's real. And the quote says, "My honest opinion and my friendly advice is this: do it or do not do it. You will regret both." I do not know how to say the name of the person who said that quote, but I sort of like this quote. It felt like it really applied to the story, and it felt like it applies to life too. You're gonna regret everything you do or everything you don't do, and that's just the truth of the matter. And you're never gonna know like if you chose the right path or if you didn't choose the right path, and you're gonna regret whatever you do or don't do, and that's just sort of the way it is. Like for me personally, I could go to a Comic-Con even if there isn't a celebrity guest that I want to go there, and I could regret going to it because maybe there wasn't anything fun about it, but at the same time I would regret not going to it because I don't know what would be happening there. Okay, now onto some of my highlights and stuff that I marked that I was like, yikes. What is PBR? Why does PBR keep coming up? Is it some form of alcohol? And if it is, could we explain this? Because we aren't reading this knowing about tons of alcohol. We're reading this because it's a science fiction book or because we support the author. We don't know about specific names of alcohol. And the thing is, like, if you say martini, I think that's an alcohol, or tequila, it's like, okay, we generally know what those are. But an abbreviation, PBR, I was like, can you explain this to me? And my Kindle has been broken for a while and I can't connect to the Wi-Fi. This is like one of the oldest versions of Kindle available. And yeah, I couldn't look up that word when I was on my Kindle. Also, one thing too is that there were so many mentions of alcohol, and I was like, really, I'd rather you be going into the scientific details of the Sphere or going into how the Sphere is affecting Ned personally than to be talking about alcohol non-stop. I was just like, please stop talking about alcohol, please. It's too much. Also, I'm pretty sure if you get drunk every single day or every other day, you're an alcoholic. So the main character is pretty much an alcoholic. And I didn't like that. And I don't know, it seemed like he's able to handle hangovers really well, and like he drove when he was extremely drunk, and I was like, don't think that's necessarily possible. The other thing too was like, there was a female character in here that, I don't know, she drank a lot too, but not as much as the guys, but I was like, your like alcohol rate between males and females can sometimes be different just because of the way our bodies are made. And I was like, shouldn't she be like blackout drunk right now? And shouldn't the guy be blackout drunk like 50% of the time with how much alcohol he's drinking? It just didn't feel like adding alcoholic drinking wasn't necessary. And there was fun like a trip that Ned took with his relatives to a different city, and they just drank the whole time there, and I was like, oh great, they're gonna explore the city. I'm gonna learn more about the city that I've never traveled to. And instead it was like, oh, let's go to all these bars and get drunk. It's like, what the heck? Just why? I'm gonna move on from alcohol because I could rant about this for days because I'm pissed off about this whole alcohol thing in the book. There was a sentence that really pulled me out of this book, and I basically set down my Kindle and I was like, what the heck? Why did you say this? I'm starting to get into spoiler zone, just warning you. Basically, I was reading the book and I set down my Kindle and I was like, what the heck? Because there was a quote today that said neither of them knew it, but that would be the last time Ned and Viv would ever speak to each other. What? The context made no sense, and I didn't need to know that. I'd rather just be surprised about the fate of these characters than to know this from the start. And it happened right after a phone conversation, and it was a nice phone conversation between Ned and Viv, and I was like, why? Why did you include this? It pulled me out of the story. I was like, in the story, in this world, and then I got that, and I was like, now I'm not in the world, and now I'm just frustrated. In some situations that quote would work, but not in the situation that it was in the book. I was just like, please don't do this to me. And here's an example of a random detail that we literally didn't need. So, there's two things about this quote. In this part, he mentions Frank, and when he's thinking of places that he might run away to, and he says Frank is a previously unmentioned friend of Ned's from Lebanon. First of all, the way it was put in parentheses in there was really awkward, and it felt like the author was like trying to talk to the readers. We don't need that. We could have just said he had a friend in this city and he was considering going to that city because his friend and his friend's daughter lived there, or something like that. We didn't need this detail. And it was only in there for like 1 second. If Frank made an appearance later in the book, which he did not, then maybe we give a little bit of background to him, but we do not need to say unmentioned friend, because we know that he's not mentioned. We've read the whole book, okay? Yeah, if you read the whole book and he's not mentioned, we don't need it pointed out to us that he is an unmentioned friend, because we clearly know that. That seems like something an author would make as a note. Like if I were writing a book and I introduced Frank and I would say an unmentioned friend, and I would write that for myself so that I can go in there later and like add stuff in to introduce him better. There's a whole part about talking about how the spheres were going to be placed in the rectangle. The whole thing about the spheres was a sphere is like a circle orby thing, and the fact that there were cylinders off of it, I was like, that's weird to be calling them the spheres, but okay. But then it went into a long paragraph explaining how they were going to do all these different combinations of spheres into this rectangle, and I was like, you literally just have to say that there are 3 holes and they're just going to stick the spheres in the holes, because we know that the spheres have cylinders off of it. We don't need it in detail that the spheres with the cylinder is going to slide into the hole in the rectangle. We sort of already know that, and it's already implied based on the way that both of these items are described. And the fact that they list off multiple combinations of how they were going to put these 2 spheres into the rectangle, I was like, we didn't need that. I'd rather, like, I don't know, something intense or exciting happen. And now there's 2 more things I want to mention, and these are something that sort of gave me more like insight into the book, that I wouldn't say they changed my view of the book, but they are just interesting to note. And these are like the author's note at the end. So he said, this is the first book I've ever written. I wrote it in 36 days, and it is very far from perfect. 36 days for a novel feels way too short. And I'm not trying to like call the author or be mean about it or anything, and that's not what I'm intending to do. I'm sure the author is a great guy, as I've already said before, but novels take a long time to write. Picture books even take a long time to write because you're spending time perfecting it. It just feels weird to like crack out a book and release it in like a little over a month. That just feels really weird to me, and it sort of explained why the book was the way it was. I think a little more time would have been helpful. I find for me personally, I write fan fiction, and I haven't published much of my fan fiction, but when I do write fan fiction, with me with fan fiction and a lot of other people is I start writing fan fiction or I finish writing fan fiction and I set it to the side before I go back to it or before I post it online, because I can view it with a fresh eyes, and I can view it as if I'm a different person if I forget like most of what I wrote. I can view it as if I'm a reader and see like, would this actually interest me or would this not interest me? So yeah, 36 days feels short, but it sort of explains how the book was, why it was, or how it was. I don't know if I'm wording that right. The other thing the author said at the end of his note was, this was just a way for me to get introduced to the writing process. Okay, great, that's a way for you to get introduced into the writing process. It doesn't mean you have to upload it online. I've written tons of stories. I haven't uploaded them online. I haven't published a book. Just because it's your first work doesn't mean you have to upload it. I really would recommend for everyone, if you are trying to publish a book, a fan fiction, or anything of the sort, take a long time writing it, flesh out all the details. Make sure it's what you would want to be reading. Don't just write a book to write a book. Write a book because you have a story or because you want to be an author, and really like think about it deeply. Take a long time doing it. Get editors, get other people's opinions before you publish the book. I have written tons of short stories for, say, like my creative writing classes, but I have not uploaded my stories online, and I'm not going to, because that was my introduction to the writing process. Doesn't mean I'm gonna upload it. Now I'm gonna go into some things that I appreciated from the book, because I feel like I've been like roasting this book nonstop, and I'm sorry about that, but here are some things that I appreciate about the book. First of all, I appreciate that the book went to some locations that I wouldn't have otherwise known about. In case you don't know, I'm from Oregon, and I'm from one of the most populated areas in Oregon, and generally when I go traveling on vacation, I go to places like Seattle, Washington, Los Angeles, California, London, Orlando, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, all these populated places. So it is nice to sort of get an insight into what a small town would be like and to sort of get to know all these new areas that I haven't known much about before. I mean, most of the book takes place in Kansas, and that's a place I've always wanted to visit, so I appreciated that part of it. I also appreciated the part in Louisiana because I personally don't know anything about Louisiana. So I really liked having that insight in a small town and insight into these small towns that I have no familiarity with. The other thing is, I don't know if the author is from Kansas or any of these states that are like in the middle of the country, but basically the way it was written is really, to me, what it seems like someone from these places would talk like, and I really appreciated that. When I went to Dallas, Texas, I was a little surprised that I didn't hear any accents, and that really caught me off guard, and I think it was just because Dallas is such a big place, and I feel like people would be traveling from other parts of the country or the world to go to Dallas, Texas, but I think in some of these small towns they might still have these accents, so I really appreciated seeing the accents and sort of reaffirming in my brain that like some people talk like that. I haven't really gone to the middle section of the US that much yet, so yeah, I just liked getting the insight into it. So the first thing is, I don't really know how there's going to be a second book based on this. Like, if it had been more mixed, like, oh, here's stuff about the Saphir, then here's stuff about Ned, and back and forth, I could see how there was a second book, or maybe if it even went into some of the people with the other Saphirs, or if it went into the FBI more, but it really focused on Ned, and it really seemed like Ned was the main character and the story was about him and his life, because the Saphir felt like almost a little bit of a side story because it focused on him so much. But then the second thing is too, like, Ned killing himself, I really did not want that, and I don't see the context for why it happened. I mean, the whole premise of the story is he finds this thing in his backyard, he lies to the FBI, then all of a sudden he like travels to hide it in some place, and then he tries to travel away and then he kills himself. Like, why? Why wouldn't you just give it to the FBI? I'm not going to be reading the second book, well, probably not, but I really hope that in the second book they really flesh into how the Saphir affects other people, because I really hope the Saphir was affecting Ned and how he was acting, because a lot of what he was doing, I was like, a normal human would not be doing that. So I really hope the Saphir is like affecting him and it's not just he, I don't know, is impulsive, because that felt really off to me the way he was acting. That wraps up my little rant slash review slash I didn't like that book. I gave it 1 out of 5 stars. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed me ranting. I do rants like this all the time about different books. A lot of the times I end up deleting the videos, or I do the rants in front of another person, like a family member. So yeah, if you enjoyed me ranting about a book that I didn't like, feel free to give this video a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comment section if you want to hear me rant about books more, because I have strong feelings about books and I'd be willing to rant about books. I just don't know if that's what people want to see or not. So yeah, if you want to follow my journey of reading more books, feel free to go check out my Bookstagram, which I will link down in the description below. I also have my normal Instagram linked. I am a cosplayer, and I do go to Comic-Cons a lot, and I do just have a nerdy life. So yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see other book reviews that are me, most of them are more positive, and I will link them down below, or at least I'll link one of them down below at a minimum. But yeah, I am gonna go do some more reading, I think, because I'm home alone, and what else am I supposed to do? So I'm gonna go work on finishing up this book. The book I'm currently reading is We Hunt the Flame by Hafsah Faizal, and it's entirely different than the Saphir. I hope everyone is having a fantastic week, and I will see all of you in a future video. Bye!